All right, we're live. We're back. James Nolan Podcast. Thank you guys. If you're tuning in on X or YouTube, welcome back. Welcome back. It's been a long hiatus for me. Started a new job, so I had to take a little bit of a break, get settled in there. But now that I'm settled in, I'm going to be back doing at least one podcast, maybe 2, 3, sometimes, 7 a week, like in the old days. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has happened since I last did a podcast. Very excited to be back. Very excited to get into it. Some of the things I wanted to touch on today. First and foremost, spring training. Spring training is here. I got a lot of stuff to talk about the Mets. Got a lot of stuff to talk about the Yankees running it back. Obviously, the Mets making some new moves. They look like a completely new team. So we're going to touch on the Mets. We're going to touch on the Yankees. And I also want to dive into some football today about these new Derek Carr rumors popping up with the Jets. Also want to talk about Giants and John Harbaugh and the coaching changes that they made. And then the Knicks, of course, too. We're going to touch on the Knicks with their big win over the 76ers last night, smoking them. Jose Alvarado going absolutely off. But let's get into it right away. First topic, Carson Bench. I think that's the most exciting topic right now in Mets spring training. I know they brought in Freddie Peralta. I know they brought in Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco, a lot of new faces, Louis Robert Jr., a lot of new faces on this Mets team going into 2026. And obviously Lindor, the hamate bone injury right now, but I'm not too concerned about that because even if he misses opening day, I don't think Lindor will be out for a prolonged period of time to start the year, maybe a week at most. But the biggest thing I think going on in spring training right now, the thing that all Mets fans are paying attention to the most is who's their right fielder. Because we know that Juan Soto is now officially going to be playing left field for the New York Mets in 2026, a move that I think is long overdue. Even though Brandon Nimmo didn't have an arm last year, I still think it made more sense to even put Soto in left field and Nimmo in right field, even maybe center. Who knows? But Soto is now the left fielder, and I think that's a great move, a great decision that him and the Mets came up with, because left field and Citi Field, a lot less ground to cover than in right field and Citi Field. So I'm pretty excited to see Soto in left field in 2026. But the biggest story in this spring training is Carson Bench. Carson Bench is, outside of Nolan McLean, he's the Mets' top prospect. In my opinion, he is the Mets' top prospect because we already know what Nolan McLean is or what he could be, right? We already know that Nolan McLean has the potential to be a frontline starter, maybe even an ace, maybe even one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball. That's what he was in the 8 games that he threw last year. When he came up, he was one of the best pitchers. He was actually statistically, after he came up, a top 5 pitcher in baseball. But Carson Bench is undoubtedly the most exciting player to watch in this spring training because of the potential he has. He's only 23 years old. He actually did play on the same college team, Oklahoma State, as Nolan McLean, and both were two-way players in Oklahoma State. So that is pretty cool just to note. But Carson Bench, undoubtedly a elite level prospect. Doesn't mean he's going to be an elite level player, but you got to be excited about him, especially because it's also David Stern's first draft pick that he under his regime, under David Stern's regime. This is his first guy, right? This is his first guy. Brett Beatty is not a David Stearns guy. Mark Vientos, Francisco Alvarez, none of those guys were David Stearns guys. They were drafted by prior GMs like Billy Epler. I forgot who drafted Mark. I think it was Billy Epler who also drafted Mark Vientos. But fact of the matter is, Carson Bench is a David Stearns guy. That was David Stearns' first-round draft pick. First-round draft pick with the Mets. And last year in AAA, he did struggle. He was also hurt in 24 games. He hit 178, an OPS of only 583, but that was only 24 games, and he was hurt. He was hurt a lot. But here's the thing. Across the 3 leagues he played in, single A, double A, and AAA, worked his way up the ranks very quick. Last year altogether across those 3 leagues, he hit 15 home runs, stole 22 bases, had a 281 batting average, a 385 on base, and a 472 slug, which adds up to an 857 OPS. Didn't strike out a lot. In 116 games, he only struck out 92 times. That's across 519 plate appearances, and he only struck out 92 times. That's really good. I know it's the minor leagues, but it's still really good. It's very intriguing. The power numbers, not sky high like a guy like Ryan Clifford or even a guy like Mark Vientos or Francisco Alvarez when he was in the minors, but still 15 home runs, a guy who stole 22 bases, and he's only striking out 92 times out of over 500 plate appearances. Only struck out 92 times. I think that's a big deal. Big deal. He only walked 68 times during those 514 plate appearances, but you still got to like the fact that he strikes out minimal. Doesn't strike out a lot. Can hit for a high average, can steal bases, and he's a very good defender in the outfield. Played the majority of his time in center field in the minor leagues. Now it's looking like he will be in right field. Because with Louis Robert Jr. here, or Louis Robert Jr. here, I should say, Carson Bench is not going to get a lot of time in center field, especially if he plays well. His spot is right field. And I think not only did the Mets move Soto to left field because Soto wanted to play there, and that's where he's playing in the WBC, and he's getting his reps, and it's obviously a lot less ground to cover in left field in Citi Field. I think it's also because of Carson Bench. I think Carson Bench is a main reason why they're moving Soto to left field. No matter what we hear from the media, oh, it's Soto's WBC, him being selfish. I think, does some of that play into the decision? Yeah, 100%. But I think the main part of the reason is it opens up right field for Carson Bench. That's where Carson Bench played in college. That's where he played in Oklahoma State. Also a two-way player, which is pretty cool. But the majority of his games in Oklahoma State were in right field. He got a lot of reps in center field last year in the minor leagues because it looked like the path for him in the MLB for the Mets was center field, especially with Brandon Nimmo in left. They didn't know if they could move his contract. They obviously did, so that's huge. And it looked like left field, but now Soto's in left, and they have Robert Jr. in center field. And with Robert Jr. in center field, I know the offensive production hasn't been there the last 2 years. We're kind of hoping that he kind of taps back into what he was in 2023, where he's a 40 home run guy who stole over 30 bases, hit for a high average, over an 800 OPS. That would be great. But even at his worst offensively, Robert Jr. is just a Tyrone Taylor with more upside offensively. So if you're going to tell me that Louis Robert Jr. bare minimum is going to be, a sub 240, 230 hitter, but you know what? He's going to steal a ton of bases, and he's going to play an elite center field because he is an elite defender, better defender in center field than Tyrone Taylor. And that's saying a lot because we all know how good Tyrone Taylor is out there in center field. I think Robert Jr. is going to get a lot of playing time this year, no matter what he does on the offensive side. Carson Bench, though, in right field, I think it's a better fit for the Mets, and it's a better fit for him. He's got a cannon of an arm, and that's what you want in right field. And he can cover a lot of ground because obviously the Mets trusted him to potentially be the center fielder for the Mets. So I think defensively, I think Carson Bench will provide a lot for the Mets in right field. Offensively, listen, I'm not expecting too much. I'm not expecting him to do what he did last year in the minor leagues, where across those 3 leagues, he hit 281, had an 857 OPS, hit 15 homers, only struck out those 92 times in 519 plate appearances. I don't expect him to just click right away, but I think it is a good time to give him a shot. I think the perfect time is opening day. Because when you look at it, it's not like, when Francisco Alvarez got called up in 2022, there was a lot of pressure on him. He was the big call up for the Mets in late in 2022. Brett Beatty, he had a lot of pressure on him when he got called up in 2022, a lot of pressure, right? And you looked at the Mets roster in 2022, outside of Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor, there wasn't many surefire things in that offense, right? You had Mark Canha. Mark Canha was their third best hitter in 2022. Eventually Eduardo Escobar. The Mets offense in 2022, as much, you can also have, obviously, Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil won a batting title, but the two main pieces were Pete Alonso and Lindor. Now you look at this lineup heading into 2026, sure, losing Pete Alonso's home runs is going to suck. Losing the home runs from Brandon Nimmo is going to suck. But, all around, I think it is a better lineup. Bo Bichette's a guy who was second in the American League in batting average last year. only behind Aaron Judge. Jorge Polanco had an 800 OPS from the left side and the right side of the plate. Obviously, you have Juan Soto, who's an MVP, elite caliber, probably a top 5 hitter in baseball. Francisco Lindor, bearing the injury now with the hamate bone. And like I said before, I don't think he's going to be out. Even if he is out opening day, it's only going to be a week. So it's really not going to be that big of a deal. I think now is the perfect time for Carson Bench because it'll take a lot of pressure off him. Brett Beatty was swinging the bat well, late last year in the second half of the season. Francisco Alvarez, same thing. So there's not going to be too much pressure on Carson Bench to just tap into his potential right away. I think he's going to have time to grow, especially if he's playing good defensively. I think the Mets are going to give him a lot of wiggle room and a lot of time to fail, at least on the offensive side, because I'm not really worried about him defensively in right field because, like I said, in Oklahoma State, he got a lot of time in right field. If he played center field at a very good level in the minors last year, I think he would probably be good in right field. And he's got a cannon of an arm. He was a two-way player in college, which suggests that, yes, his arm is going to be very good out there in right field. So I think now is the perfect time to call up Carson Bench. Opening day, even if he doesn't tear the cover off the ball in spring training, what are the other options? I mean, yeah, Brett Beatty, him playing in right field, I guess you could do it, but that's tough. That's tough. I don't see Brett Beatty playing right field. I see Brett Beatty getting a lot of time at DH, getting a lot of time at first, second, and even third. Because you could DH Marcus Semien here and there. You could DH Bo Bichette here and there. And you could DH Jorge Polanco here and there. Or you can just make Jorge Polanco the full-time DH. I think that makes the most sense. I think Brett Beatty's upside at first base actually could be very high, considering how good he was at the hot corner. Just him being an overall great athlete. I think he has a very high upside at first base. So I do want to see Brett Beatty get a lot of time at first base. But with that, I don't think we're going to see Brett Beatty a lot in right field. I just don't think it makes sense. You want to improve this team defensively. So you're going to have Soto play, left field. You're going to have Beatty in right field. Bo Bichette learning a new position at third. Jorge Polanco learning a new position at first. I think that's just a lot of guys learning new positions. Realistically, outside of up the middle, the Mets defense hasn't really improved drastically, which is funny considering David Stern said he wants to improve the run prevention, which he did with the pitching. But, I mean, the position-wise, Soto obviously isn't a great defender in right field to begin with. Semien and Lindor, outside of those two, do we love Bo Bichette at third base? No, it's a brand new position. He's never played it there. He's never played there. Jorge Polanco's never played a major league game at first base. Francisco Alvarez, he's got a cannon, but we all know that he has had some quirks defensively. So I think it makes more sense to put Carson Bench, who will probably be a sure thing defensively in right field. And like I said, even if he doesn't tear the cover off the ball in spring training, if you see something like, he's only striking out 92 times across 519 plate appearances in the minors. Well, if he doesn't strike out a lot of the majors, even if he's not hitting, 280 with an 800 plus OPS, I think it's still a plus. So, like I said, with the amount of pressure that won't be on him to perform right away, when you have guys like Soto, Lindor, you have a Jorge Polanco, you have a Bo Bichette, you have a Marcus Semien, you have Louis Robert Jr., who's probably going to have more pressure offensively to start the year than Carson Bench, because we're all going to be looking at him. Like the expectation for Louis Robert Jr. right now is not only the elite glove that he has in center field, but it's also, okay, you worked out with Juan Soto all year. You're off that crappy White Sox team that set a record last year for the most losses in MLB history. Like, Robert Jr. will have a higher expectation offensively, I think, than Bench. So that's why I think now is the perfect time to give Bench a chance. Let him learn. What's the point of having him in AAA again? What's the point? I think now's the time. And I do think that he is going to be the opening day right fielder. And I'm very excited for it. And I think that's the biggest story in spring training for the Mets. But let's get into some more spring training stories for the Mets. You have obviously the addition of Freddie Peralta, barring no injuries. We're hoping that this Mets rotation can have a bounce back year. Last year was tough. Last year was very tough. But the main X factor, I think, for this rotation heading into 2026 isn't Nolan McLean. It isn't Sean Manaea. It isn't Freddie Peralta. I think it's Kodai Senga. I think Kodai Senga is the biggest X factor in this rotation because when he's healthy, he is one of the best pitchers in baseball. I know a lot of people don't like hearing that because he gets hurt all the time. But when he's healthy, there's no doubt in my mind that he's a frontline level starter. I mean, look at what he did in 2023. A 2.98 ERA, struck out over 200 guys, made the NL All-Star team, and last year too. Look at his numbers last year before that hamstring injury. He was pitching to a sub-2 ERA. He finished the year with a 3.02 ERA, which overall is not bad. But when you factor in what happened to him in the second half after he came back from that hamstring injury, it's kind of shocking that he kept his ERA that low. And it goes to show you how good he was, how dominant he was in the first half prior to that hamstring injury. So that's why I'm saying Senga is the X factor in this rotation. Do I expect Freddie Peralta and Nolan McLean to be lights out? 100%. But if Kodai Senga's healthy, I'm expecting him to perform. And I think he will perform. Now, the only question mark is, can he stay healthy? That's the question mark there. And then you look at a guy like, this is why I really love the Mets rotation. And that's why I didn't really want them to make a ton of moves. Because if you look at the guys that were available this offseason, none of them were sure things, right? Framber Valdez is not a sure thing. As great as he's been over the past couple of years, past really his whole entire career, he's at the tail end of his career. Last year, he had one of the worst years of his career. So I didn't really want to go all in on Valdez. I didn't want to go all the way on Ranger Suarez because he's coming off a lot of innings pitched these past few years. A lot. So I didn't really want to go all in on Ranger Suarez. Dylan Cease, I think, got overpaid. I think the Mets made the right decision in looking at the trade market. And they got their guy in Freddie Peralta. At least David Stearns got his guy in Freddie Peralta because that's his guy. He's now traded for him 2 times. 2 times David Stearns has traded for him. So he must love Freddie Peralta. But, Sean Manaea now slides back a spot in the rotation, which I think is huge. I think a lot of the reasons Sean Manaea struggled last year was because he was pitching with loose bodies in his left arm. I think that was a big reason why. I look at a guy like David Peterson, and yes, did he fall off the map and overall his numbers didn't look great? Yeah, but if you watched the season and you followed the Mets all year long, you remember David Peterson was their most trustworthy arm for about 85% of the year. He just had a terrible September, like an atrocious September. This was a guy heading into August had a sub-3 ERA. This is a guy who was an NL All-Star for the first time in his career. He had 32 straight starts going back to 2024 with a sub-3 ERA. David Peterson is a good pitcher. Whether you want to hear it or not, David Peterson is good. He just fell off completely. And I think a lot of that had to do with he's never pitched more innings in his entire career. He's only pitched over 100 innings, I think, once, and that was in 2024. So I'm banking on David Peterson a lot, actually, this year, where I think, now that he had to experience such a heavy workload last year, maybe now his arm is built up a little bit better. Maybe he knows what he needs to do to sustain the level of success he had through a whole season and not just 80%, 80, 85%. Because I'm sure a lot of us do not forget that David Peterson was that most reliable starter for the Mets last year. And then you look at a guy like Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes was actually one of the most reliable, if not the most reliable starter all year for the Mets. Obviously outside of Nolan McLean when he came up. But, you look at Clay Holmes' year last year, he started off hot, fizzled out in the middle, and then finished very strongly. We all remember game 161 from Clay Holmes. Put on a Johan Santana, Mike Pelfrey performance. That vintage, Mets starter game 161 performance. So I'm really excited actually about this Mets rotation. I think it's one of the more underrated rotations, and even by us Mets fans, because you love the top two, right? Freddie Peralta and Nolan McLean. You love that top two. Has the potential to be one of the best 1-2 punches in baseball next year. You look at a guy like, you have your wild cards. You have your wild card in Sean Manaea. You have your wild card in Kodai Senga. If both stay healthy, you're assuming they should pitch well, because we've seen it out of both of them, especially Senga. Senga has the ability to be one of the best pitchers in baseball when he's healthy. And if Senga's healthy, that's a great 1-2-3 punch. Manaea, I mean, if he can be even half of what he was in 2024, that's huge as a 4 or 5 guy. David Peterson, like I said before, I think he can bounce back from what he did in that August and September, because we know that he was one of the best pitcher, probably the best Mets pitcher on the roster for 85% of the year last year. I look at a guy even like Tobias Myers. If they're stretching him out to be a starter potentially, barring any injuries to this rotation, which there probably will be heading into the year, I like Tobias Myers. I like him. Even as a reliever, I mean, I think he's going to have more success as a reliever, but it's not a bad idea to have him be your long man out of the pen, or, a spot start here and there. And then I look at some of the young guys. Like, they still have Jonah Tong. They still have Christian Scott. And Christian Scott pitched. He had flashes back in 2023 and 2024. When Christian Scott got called up to the big leagues in 2024, he flashed like, holy shit, this guy can be very good. He's a guy who strikes out a ton of players. He had one of the best strikeout rates in the minor leagues in 2024 and in 2023. So trading Brandon Sproat sucked, because I was very high on Brandon Sproat. But when you remember, like, oh shit, we still have Christian Scott. He's coming back. Like, that's a big deal. I mean, you look at what he did in AAA before he got called up. He was dominating. Had a 2.76 ERA, had 55 strikeouts in 42.1 innings pitched. In 2023, you look at his overall numbers. He had an 11 strikeout per 9 rate, had a 2.57 ERA. Even in 2022, he put up a 11.8 strikeout per 9. This is a guy who strikes out a lot of guys. He's got power. And now we go to the bullpen. Let's talk about this bullpen. I want to mainly talk about Devin Williams right now, because I have high expectations for Devin Williams. I mean, you're getting paid big bucks right now. This is a guy who everyone thought, when the Yankees traded for him last year, was going to just dominate for the Yankees. I mean, realistically, you look at his numbers throughout his career, he had one bad year, and that's with the Yankees. And I always point to Edwin Diaz's first year in New York. Pitching in New York is a completely different animal. Luke Weaver says it. Luke Weaver is talking about it almost every time he speaks with the media this spring training. I'm more on Luke Weaver in a minute. But, I mean, everyone was kind of knocking the Mets, especially Yankee fans, for the Mets giving Devin Williams a 3-year deal and missing out on Edwin Diaz to the Dodgers. But Devin Williams has actually been better than Edwin Diaz. He was better than Edwin Diaz from 2021 through 2024. I mean, you look at his numbers, they're just insane. In 2020, first off, I know it was COVID year, but still, 22 games he pitched in 2020. He had a .33 ERA, a sub 0.50 ERA. I know it's only 22 games, but that's tough to do. 2021, he followed it up with a 2.50 ERA in 58 games. Pitched 65 games in 2022, a 1.93 ERA. In 2023, 61 games, a 1.53 ERA. So 1.93. Look at these numbers. from 2020. And then obviously in 2024, he was lights out too, 1.25 ERA. So before he went to the Yankees, outside of his rookie year, he had a 0.33 ERA, followed by a 2.5, followed by a 1.93, followed by a 1.53, followed by a 1.25. When Devin Williams is on, he's probably the best closer in baseball. And the Mets did get him on a pretty friendly contract, especially if they're getting a guy that's going to pitch to a sub-2 ERA, which he's pitched to a sub-2 ERA 1, 2, 3, 4 times. 4 times in his 7-year career. He's only had an ERA above 3 twice. One was his rookie year when he pitched 13 games, and one was last year with the Yankees. So, listen, man, don't shoot the messenger, but Devin Williams undoubtedly has the ability to not only be an elite closer, but be the best closer in baseball, because that's what he was from 2020 to 2024. For a 5-year period before last year, Devin Williams was undoubtedly the best closer in baseball. So I don't know why some Met fans were like pissed off that they signed him just because he had one bad year with the Yankees. Do we not remember Edwin Diaz's first year in New York? It was terrible. And it's not just pitchers. Look at Lindor's first year in New York. We view Lindor as a hero, as the captain of the Mets. Look what he did in 2024. Sometimes people have Carlos Beltran, who just went to the Hall of Fame, and his Hall of Fame cap is a New York Met logo. His first year in New York was terrible. So I am not worried one bit about Devin Williams. In fact, I think Devin Williams is going to surprise a lot of people. A lot of people. Freaking Peter, clowning Devin Williams, huh? Did you not just hear what I said? I'll read it to you again, Pete. From 2020 to 2024, 5 years, 0.33 ERA in 2020, 2.5 ERA in 2021, 1.93 ERA in 2022, 2023, 1.53 ERA, 2024, 1.25 ERA. Now, do I believe that Devin Williams is the guy he was for 1 year of his career and his first year pitching in a big market with a 4.79 ERA? Or is it more realistic to believe he was the guy that he was for 5 straight years prior to last year's debacle? I mean, if you look at it mathematically, last year was an outlier year. That's an outlier year. I'm willing to bank on Devin Williams being one of the best closers in baseball again. Now let's talk about Luke Weaver, because Luke Weaver, another guy the Mets stole from the Yankees. And a lot of Met fans don't like it. A lot of Yankee fans clown it. But listen, when a guy has success in New York, across town, we see the Yankees do it too. It's hard to play in New York. I mean, they had Carlos Beltran for a few years, who had a lot of success as a Met, obviously, because now he's going into the Hall of Fame as a Met. You know, they signed Amed Rosario again after trading for him last year. Playing in New York is tough. We not only see the Mets do it, but we see the Yankees do it too. So signing Luke Weaver, I like, because before Luke Weaver got hurt last year, you know, he was one of the best relievers in baseball. You look at what he did in 2024 too. He pitched to a 2.89 ERA across 62 games. I like it. I like it. And I mean, look what the Mets did with Clay Holmes last year. Look what the Mets did with Clay Holmes last year. They took a guy who was probably, you know, a good reliever, not an elite reliever, sometimes great, but mainly just good. And they made him into a pretty good starter, to a guy where you can give the ball to every 5 days, and you can kind of bank on him going 5-6 innings and not letting up more than 3 runs. So I like the idea of signing these former Yankees, because if you prove you can play in New York, why not sign him? Like, we're taking a risk on a guy like, you know, Jorge Polanco. When was the last time he played in a big market like New York? So I'm pretty excited about this bullpen. You know, you look at the other, not the non-additions, but the guys that they're coming back with. I love Brooks Raley. I think Brooks Raley is not just a lefty that can go attack lefties. I think he's just a very good reliever. And he proved that last year. He was great last year for the Mets. You look at a guy like AJ Minter, who should be back sometime early May. Not just a lefty that's good against lefties. So that's 4 trustworthy arms out of the bullpen. I like it. Luis Garcia, who's just coming off a pretty good year. I got to get his numbers from last year. But he had a, what did he pitch to last year? Like a sub 3. Yeah, 3.42 ERA last year from Luis Garcia. When he was with the Dodgers, 20 games, with the Angels last year in 20 games, pitched to a 2 ERA in 20 games. And then he obviously pitched with the Dodgers as well. Not as much success as he had with the Angels, but he's also a guy who has playoff experience. In 2022 with the Padres, he pitched to a 1.93 ERA out of the pen. So I like the addition of Luis Garcia. I don't think he's going to be, a setup guy for us, but it's still a good arm to have out of the bullpen. I think this bullpen improved a lot, especially compared to last year's guys. Like outside of Edwin Diaz and Brooks Raley, we didn't want to see anybody out of this pen. Ryan Stanek sucked. Reed Garrett fell off, mainly because he had to get Tommy John, so the UCL obviously was probably bothering him. Reed Garrett fell off. Huascar Brazaban, I still like that he's here with the Mets, and the fact that he has options I think is huge. He's a guy who can go multiple innings. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Huascar Brazaban. And a guy like Dylan Ross, who's got a ton of upside. Dylan Ross is a guy who touches 100 miles per hour. He did get called up last year at the tail end, but we never saw him get into a game, which was kind of disappointing because I wanted to see what this guy has. Like, what can he actually do? But you look at his numbers in the minor leagues, they're pretty good. He's a little bit all over the place. We walked a lot of batters last year in the minors, but he struck out a ton of guys. I mean, this is a guy who pitched to a sub 3 ERA last year. I think he struck out over 60 guys. Pulling up his numbers now to be exact. Yeah, last year across 3 different leagues, 2.17 ERA in 49 games last year. 54 innings pitched, struck out 80 guys. The only issue was the walks. He walked 33 guys. Well, that's not a lot compared to when you're striking out 80 guys. When you're striking out 13.3 batters per 9 innings, that's pretty good, especially when you're touching 100 miles per hour. So I do want to see Dylan Ross. I mean, he's huge, dude. He's 6'5", 250, only 25 years old. I want to see what they got in this kid. I really do. Now let's touch on the offense. We touched on Carson Bench a little bit. What up, Heck? How you doing, man? Has been a minute. But yeah, we touched on Bench, but let's touch on some of the other guys. Soto, he's going to put up MVP numbers. He had a great year last year, especially after May. Juan Soto turned into Juan Soto after May, especially if he can steal, another 30 bases, close to 40 bases. Just another layer of his game that he's just coming on with. But when you look at the new additions, I think the one I'm most excited about is Louis Robert Jr. Louis Robert Jr., I think really does have the potential to just be a huge surprise for the Mets. Huge surprise. There's a guy who hit, I think, 38 homers. Yeah, I think it was 38 homers. I'm going to pull it up. Had 38 homers, if I stand correct, in 2023. Like, his 2023 year was insane. Yeah, 38 homers in 2023, hit 264, 857 OPS, and also stole 20 bases, had 80 RBIs. Just the last 2 years, he's been terrible. Across the last 2 years, he's only hit 223 with an OPS of 660. Now, if he's just that, like I said before, at the bare minimum, if he does do what he did the last 2 years, I'll still take it. Because he's a guy who's got pop. He hit 14 homers consecutively in the past 2 years, had 53 RBIs, and he plays better defense than Tyrone Taylor, and that's saying a lot. So I do love the addition of Robert Jr., especially with the fact that, he's coming from a White Sox organization that literally was the worst team in baseball history. And now he's joining guys like Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Marcus Semien, Bo Bichette, like proven winners in this league. So I'm very excited about Louis Robert Jr. I think he's going to be a huge X factor. And Bo Bichette, I think, is the biggest. Like, that was a huge move for the Mets. You let go of Pete Alonso, you let go of Brandon Nimmo, and everybody's wondering, how are they going to replace that production? Especially Pete Alonso's production. How are they going to replace it? Like McNeil, who cares? Jeff McNeil, bye. I really don't care. He did a lot of good things with the Mets, won a batting title in 2022, was a big reason for their success in 2022. But at the end of the day, Jeff McNeil, come on. He's not that 300 hitter anymore. I love the addition of Bo Bichette, though. I absolutely love it. Even though, it's kind of odd that he's going to have to play third base now, but I really don't care. I think his bat is just phenomenal. I mean, look at this guy's numbers. He had 840 OPS last year. He hit 311. 311, had 18 home runs, drove in 94 runs. And you look at his numbers since 2021, because 2021 he had 29 homers, 102 RBIs, stole 25 bases, hit 298. This is a guy who's a 294 career hitter with a career OPS of an 806. But since 2021, he averages 19 homers a game, 78 RBIs a game. 19 homers a year, 78 RBIs a year, with a 292 batting average, 795 OPS. And that's with one terrible year last year in 2024, where he played a lot of it hurt. I mean, when you look at his numbers outside of 2024, it's the only year he had a sub 800 OPS. Only year in Bo Bichette's 7-year career he had a sub 800 OPS. Only time in his career where he hit below 290. Hit 311 his rookie year in 2019. Hit 301 in 2020. Hit 298 in 21. 290 in 22. 306 in 2023 with an 814 OPS. And then obviously this year, 311 only behind Aaron Judge in the American League with an 840 OPS. Bo Bichette's a huge addition to this lineup. I really can't put it into words. And he's clutch. He is clutch. With runners in scoring position last year, he was one of the best hitters in the game. Let's take a look at last year's numbers with runners in scoring position. But that was the main reason why the Mets didn't win. Last year with runners in scoring position, he had 381. 381 with runners in scoring position last year. Over 1,000 OPS, a 1.046 OPS. With bases loaded, he had 500. With runners on, just runners on, he had 329. 329 with a 906 OPS with just runners on. And this is the best stat I love. Scoring position with 2 outs. 306 batting average, 966 OPS. He's a clutch player. He's a winning ball player. Game 7 of the World Series. If the Blue Jays ended up winning that World Series Game 7, he's probably the World Series MVP. And he just came back from injury too. So I absolutely love the addition from Bo Bichette. This is a guy who I've always loved. I've always loved Bo Bichette since he's been in the league, because I think all around he's just a very good player. I don't care what you say about the defense at shortstop, because he's not playing shortstop. And he's got a cannon of an arm, so I'm not worried about the arm from third base. He's athletic. He's very athletic. He doesn't have to cover as much ground as he had to at short. As long as his reaction time is good, which I'm pretty sure it will be, I think Bo Bichette is going to have a decent year defensively at third base. Marcus Semien, defensively, he's probably the best second baseman in the league. So, at worst, you're getting the best second baseman defensively in the league. And you never know. Some guys at the tail end of their careers, they just have weird outlier breakout years again. Just 2 years ago, he finished third in the MVP voting. Like, just 2 years ago, he had a 276 batting average, 826 OPS, 29 homers, drove in 100 runs. Like, that's just 2 years ago. If he could be half the player he was in 2023, And I think the best part about Marcus Semien is he's played over 100 games since 2021. Every year, 162 and 21, 161 and 22, 162 and 23, 159 and 24, 127 and 25. This is an Iron Man. Even in 2019, 162 games, 159 in 2018, 159 in 2016, 155 in 2015. This is a guy who plays every day. And this is, what you want. When you're a playoff team, like you look at the Yankees, year in and year out, they're in the playoffs. I don't care what anybody says about them. Year in and year out, they're in the playoffs. Why? Aaron Judge plays a lot of games. The only one who really gets hurt is Giancarlo Stanton and now Garrett Cole. But they have consistency. The Dodgers, the big bad Dodgers, they have consistency. Outside of Mookie Betts last year, which was a weird year for him, Freddie Freeman played every day. Shohei Ohtani played every day offensively. Mookie Betts, 2 years ago, played every day. Like, the consistency is huge. The Braves, when they were good, they were healthy. The Phillies, look at the Phillies. Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto now, not anymore. And same thing with Nick Castellanos. But you had guys that, Trey Turner, played every day. I think that's huge. And not just play every day, but also be healthy. Because that was the thing last year with Brandon Nimmo. Like, he played a lot, but he wasn't really healthy. He was never really fully healthy. The only time Brandon Nimmo was fully healthy was in 2022. Which just so happened to be his best year of his career. What up, Betty? Happy they broke up the core they couldn't win. See, I'm happy they broke up the core too. I'm happy they broke up the core and they brought in like this new style Mets of just guys who win. Bo Bichette's a winner. Jorge Polanco's a winner. Marcus Semien's a winner. Lindor and Soto, obviously winners. I do like the moves they made. The only move I still disagree with is letting Pete Alonso walk. That's the only move I disagree with, because last year the Mets they were one game out of the playoffs last year. But if you take Pete Alonso off that team last year, they're not one game out of the playoffs. They're more than 5, 6, maybe 8 to 10 games out of the playoffs. I still think with Pete Alonso on this roster right now, the Mets are undoubtedly the favorites in the NL East. Right now, a lot of sports books do have them as the favorites in the NL East, but it's still up in the air. It's only by 2 games, I think. So I still disagree with letting Pete Alonso walk. The fact that they didn't make an offer still irks me. But then again, if this Mets team goes out there and they make the playoffs and they win the division and they have some fun for the postseason, because winning the World Series, I hate to say it because I know Andy Martino said it, but is it realistic with the way the Dodgers are built? That's what's tough. That's what's tough. Heck says posting is important, but doesn't always translate to success. Yes, Lindor, Alonso, and Nimmo all played 155 plus games the last 3 seasons. I think that's the main reason why. Like, you look at Alonso, he was healthy, right? He put up very good numbers, probably one of the best years of his career last year. Lindor, he was healthy all of 2020, 23, 24, and 25. And he's put up great numbers the last 3 years. Nimmo, on the other hand, after 2023, he hasn't really been healthy. And it's great that he played every game, but I mean, remember in 2024 in the playoffs, the guy could barely run with his plantar fasciitis issue. Like, it's great that you're playing every day. I love it. It shows that you care. You want to win. You want to be part of it. But when you're hurting the team, like Nimmo, I like that trade. I do. I know there's some people who love Brandon Nimmo. I love Brandon Nimmo. He was one of my favorite Mets. I wish he could have retired a Met. But I think it's huge that they got rid of that contract. And also, you're clogging up a spot for a guy like Carson Bench. And I want to see Carson Bench. I want to see what this kid's made of. Because, I mean, the fact that he only struck out 92 times in 519 plate appearances, That's intriguing enough to me. I don't need to see him break in spring training. I don't. Especially with the defense I think he's going to provide us in right field. So Heck brings up a very good point. It's not just about playing every day. It's mainly about just being healthy. It's mainly about being healthy. That's the biggest thing. Like we saw with Francisco Alvarez, the majority of Francisco Alvarez's career, he's been hurt a lot. He's been taking a beating. And it's really not just like he's injury prone. It's just weird injuries. Getting freaking shelled in the hand, breaking his hamate bone, and then during his rehab assignment, gets nailed in the hand again. Or a weird slide into second base screws up his hand again. Like he's just had bad luck. But we saw Alvarez healthy in his rookie year, and he hit 25 homers. We saw Alvarez last year at the tail end, healthy. And what did he do? He was one of the most dangerous bats in their lineup. So I just want to see this team stay healthy. Even pitching wise. Look at Senga. When he's healthy, he actually is a very good pitcher. He's one of the best, not one of the best in the game, but he's up there as a reliable 2 or 3. A very reliable 2 or 3. He's an NL All-Star. He was an NL All-Star in 2023 when he was healthy. Even last year when he was healthy. Sub-2 ERA. He was in the Cy Young conversation before Pete Alonso screwed up his hamstring. Yeah, man. The Mets are going to be an interesting team to watch this year. Very interesting team to watch. All right, but I'm going to call it now. We've been 45 minutes in. No more Mets right now. Let's skip over to the Yankees. The Yankees, a lot of people are ripping them, right? Because they're running it back with the same team that made the ALCS and lost to the Blue Jays. God forbid they run it back with a team that won 94 games. They didn't win the division, but they still tied for the most wins in the American League. And everybody's pissed off that they're running it back. Could they have made a few additions? Of course. But you look around the league, Kyle Tucker, was that realistic? Bo Bichette, I think that's really the only one. Bo Bichette's the only one where it's like they probably could have used him. But I still think the Yankees, going into 2026, they're the favorites in the American League. Like, you have Aaron Judge, who's undoubtedly the best offensive player in baseball. I don't care what anybody says about Shohei Ohtani. Aaron Judge is better offensively. Obviously doesn't pitch, but still better offensively. You have a healthy Giancarlo Stanton. He's not starting the year on the IL. Jazz Chisholm Jr., probably the second best second baseman in all of baseball after Ketel Marte. And there's a huge drop-off offensively after Jazz Chisholm in the league. It's a very big problem right now MLB is having with second baseman. There's just not many good ones anymore. I remember back in the day, you had Dustin Pedroia, Chase Utley, Dan Ogla, Daniel Murphy. You had a ton of good second basemen. Ian Kinsler. Like, there were so many good second basemen. Now there's none. It's really weird. But outside the fact of the second baseman, running it back, I think, was the only move they could do, right? Signing Cody Bellinger was huge. You solidify the lineup, right? At least, for 2026 and the next 4 years. But Kyle Tucker was never realistic. Like, the Dodgers are paying him over $60 million a year. This is a guy who's just coming off an average year. He had 25, I think he had like 20-something homers last year, like 24, 25. He's getting paid over $60 million a year. Like, Bo Bichette's really the only guy they missed out of. They couldn't really afford to sign Kyle Schwarber because what are you going to do with Stanton? What are you going to do with Stanton? Now, I could see if you're upset with Brian Cashman because, he did clog up this team with bad moves over the year. But when he traded for Giancarlo Stanton, we can't forget the guy was coming off a ridiculous year. He hit over 290, had over 55 homers. He won an MVP, and then they traded for the MVP. And then, obviously, the injuries have derailed his career since then. But, even last year, Stanton was really good for the Yankees when he came back. And obviously, we know everybody has different thoughts about Stanton when they make the postseason. And I look at the rotation. I like their rotation. I think they made some key additions for the back end. You're going to have Garrett Cole back. Like, I think everybody forgets that. Garrett Cole is coming back. Like, the bullpen, you still have David Bednar. Right? David Bednar was the only guy the Yankees really liked last year in that bullpen, because obviously they didn't really like Luke Weaver when he came back from his injury. They didn't like Devin Williams at all. But I mean, I look at this rotation overall. Max Fried, ace. Cam Schlittler has the ability, no doubt about it. Cam Schlittler, right up there with Nolan McLean. Like, you have Cam Schlittler probably as the AL Rookie of the Year favorite, and Nolan McLean as the NL Rookie of the Year favorite. Will Warren, I think he flashed a lot of potential last year. I think the addition of Ryan Weathers was actually a good one. Louis Heel, he's starting the year in spring training. That's going to be huge for him. Carlos Rodon is coming off a fantastic year. And then obviously they got Garrett Cole. I think rotation depth-wise, they have a lot of good starters. Like, you look at their rotation, how it's stacked up. Probably Garrett Cole number 1, Max Fried number 2, Carlos Rodon number 3, Schlittler number 4, Louis Heel number 5. And then you got Ryan Weathers and Will Warren as those depth pieces. I love their bullpen. Camilo Doval has a ton of potential. Like, Doval is coming off a pretty good year, but you look at his career numbers, it's like let's look it up. Career numbers, 354 strikeouts in 297 games, 3.39 ERA. This is a guy who, he's a very good arm out of the bullpen. Throws hard, he's got a wicked slider. I love Doval. I like David Bednar. I like Fernando Cruz. There's a lot of guys in this bullpen who I still do like. Ryan Yarbrough, he was a good addition for them. And he was a very good addition for them last year. Or 2 years ago, I should say. And then you also got to factor in that there's going to be some guys on this roster that are going to improve offensively. Like, we're going to see a lot of Ben Rice. Ben Rice has the ability to be one of the most dangerous bats in this lineup. Probably the second most dangerous bat in this lineup, I could say. Obviously, no one's going to be more dangerous than Aaron Judge. But Ben Rice has the ability. You look at his Baseball Savant page, Ben Rice is ridiculous. Like, Ben Rice is actually ridiculous. I'm going to pull up his Baseball Savant page right now. Last year, a fantastic year. I mean, he really put himself on the map last year. But yeah, you look at his expected batting average, 283, 94th percentile. Expected slug, 557, 97th percentile. His average exit velocity, 93.3 miles per hour, which was 95th percentile. Barrel percentage, 92nd. Hard hit percentage, 97th. Sweet spot percentage, 90th percentile. Squared up, 89th percentile. Chase rate, 91st percentile. He's an elite hitter. No doubt about it. So I think when you factor in that, yes, you're running it back, but you're also expecting some guys to improve. Like, this is awesome. Like, there's no Anthony Volpe at shortstop to start the year. There's no Anthony Volpe at shortstop. And in fact, if he starts in the IL, they get an extra year of control over Anthony Volpe. So I think it's almost guaranteed that Anthony Volpe will not be the starting shortstop on opening day. Honestly, I think that's huge. Almost time, I think, to give up on Anthony Volpe. I've been listen, I'm not a Yankee hater. I guess sometimes I control. But it's common sense. Anthony Volpe sucks. I've been saying it for so long. Like, he's been, 3 years now? If it hasn't clicked, it hasn't clicked. Ben Rice clicked. And it's not just, good numbers. It's not just the fact that he had 26 homers last year and 836 OPS last year. It's the fact that you look at, the barrel percentage, the hard hit percentage, the expected batting average, his WRC plus. He found it. I still think there's some hope in Austin Wells. I do. But listen, this is not a terrible team. You have Jazz Chisholm, who's coming off a 30-30 year. And keep in mind, Jazz Chisholm Jr. did that in about almost half a season. 813 OPS, 31 homers last year, 80 RBIs. He plays well with that short porch in right field. Same thing with Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger's coming off a great year too. So it is going to be, Jose Caballero, with the Yankees last year, he's pretty good. Overall, like his numbers throughout his career isn't nothing special. But last year with the Yankees, 828 OPS, 266 batting average in the 40 games he played last year with the Yanks. So maybe he found something with the Yankees. Who knows? But he's also a guy who steals a ton of bases. Like he's an elite defensive player at shortstop, but he does something Anthony Volpe doesn't do. Even though he's not going to hit, 300 with a 700 plus OPS. In 2023, he stole 26 bases. 2024, 44 bases. And last year, 49 stolen bases. That's huge. You just get on base. It's basically an automatic double. I like their third base situation. I did more than I did last year. Last year, we were talking about Oswaldo Cabrera and Oswald Peraza splitting time at third base. At least now you have a very good defender in Ryan McMahon at third base. Is he the greatest hitter in the world? No. But listen, he's an elite level defender at third. Elite level defender. And if he could tap into what he was before he was with the Yankees, that's a good third baseman to have. Like you look at his numbers in 2021, 780 OPS. 780 OPS at 23 homers. Even last year he had 20 homers too. 23 homers in 23 with a 753 OPS. Like if he can be a 750 OPS guy, hits more than 20 homers, has an elite glove at third base, that's a huge plus. And then we're not even counting in what they can moves that they can make at the trade deadline. So I look at the rotation and I say, in the American League, they probably have a better rotation than anybody in the American League. They probably have a top 3 rotation in baseball. Is their bullpen lights out? No, but you still have Camilo Doval. You still have David Bednar. You still have Tim Hill. Like, you still have Ryan Yarbrough. You got reliable arms in this bullpen. And you look at their offense, I love Aaron Judge. How can you not? Probably one of the best offensive players in the last 5 decades. Like, really, that's how good Aaron Judge is. He's a special player that I think not only Yankee fans need to appreciate more, but more baseball fans just need to appreciate how good, how dominant Aaron Judge is. This is we love, right? A lot of people love 300 hitters. This is a guy who hit 53 homers last year and hit 331 while doing it. In 2024, this is a guy who hit 322 while hitting 58 homers. It's insane. It's actually insane how good he is offensively. A 3-time MVP. He wins 1 ring. He's the best Yankee of all time. I don't care what you say about Mickey Mantle. I don't care what you say about Babe Ruth. It's a different era. And if Aaron Judge just gets 1 ring, man, 1, I think he might go down as the best Yankee of all time. He's that good. He's that good. Jazz Chisholm, like I said before, top 2 second baseman in the MLB. Outside of Ketel Marte, I can't think of a better offensive second baseman than Jazz Chisholm. I can't. Cody Bellinger is going to get a lot more time at first base. And I'm not even mentioning the fact that Jason Dominguez is probably going to see a lot of more playing time, and maybe Spencer Jones, who they call a left-handed Aaron Judge. I don't think he's going to be Aaron Judge, but he's got pop. He's got a ton of pop. And with the rotation they have, like I said, I really don't think there's anybody in the American League with a better rotation. And then I look at the teams in the AL East. I look at the Orioles. Yeah, they added Pete Alonso. Outside of that, they didn't do anything really major this offseason. The Blue Jays, they lost Bo Bichette. They added Dylan Cease. Big whoop. Dylan Cease is coming off a terrible year. I think losing Bo Bichette is a very big deal for them. The Red Sox lost Alex Bregman. So I think they're going to be favorites again to win the AL East. Last year, they were going into the year as favorites. This year, they're going to go into the year as favorites. They already are. I think they're already the favorites to win the American League. Like, I really don't see, like I said, outside of Bo Bichette, I really didn't see anybody else as a good fit with the Yankees. Kyle Tucker would have been nice, but then what about Cody Bellinger? Got Cody Bellinger for basically half the price of Kyle Tucker. Literally half the price. One's getting 60 mil, one's getting 30s. So there's not much more they could have done. Did you want them to add Ranger Suarez when they already have Cam Schlittler, Carlos Rodon, Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Louis Heel, and they just added Ryan Weathers? Would that have made, and they still have Will Warren too. And they still have Clark Schmidt, who's coming back. I don't know exactly when Clark Schmidt will be back in 2026, but I think he is expected to pitch at some point. Well, he is at spring training, so that's good. But they did put him on the 60-day IL to make room for Paul Goldschmidt, whose signing is now official. Paul Goldschmidt, I mean, listen, he kills lefties. Still kills lefties. I like this team. I still do like this team. I think they're undoubtedly the favorites in the American League. And with the losses that the Blue Jays had in the offseason, losing Bo Bichette's huge. It's a bigger story than I think people are realizing. Losing Alex Bregman, that's a huge story for the Red Sox that a lot of people aren't realizing. Like, who did the Red Sox add offensively to replace Alex Bregman? Those are two of their best bats in the AL East. Gone. The Orioles, I think, are the team that are going to be fighting with the Yankees in 2026. And that's because they have Gunnar Henderson. That's because they added Pete Alonso. Jackson Holiday still got some upside. I do like their rotation. I think Baltimore's this sneaky team. Not even a sneaky team. They have one of the best lineups in baseball now. It's going to be interesting, man, this 2026 season, because with the Yankees running it back and the Mets just looking completely new, I think it's too, yes, the Yankees are favorites in the American League, and now the Mets are favorites in the NL East, and they look completely different. One team looks completely different. One team's running it back. And like I said, would the Mets have run it back too if they made the NLCS again? Probably. They probably would have tried to re-sign Pete Alonso if they made the NLCS and they won 94 games. I don't know about Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil, but I know Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz would be back. So, I mean, let's see. It's going to be a fun baseball season. I'm pumped for it. Spring training is officially underway. Pitchers and catchers report. We're going to see some baseball in the next few weeks too, and the WBC is right around the corner. And Team USA is absolutely loaded. And I was worried about two teams. The Dominican Republic, because they are freaking loaded too. And I was also worried about Team Puerto Rico. But without, Carlos Correa and Francisco Lindor, I think that's two major losses for Team Puerto Rico. I think the Dominican Republic, their lineup definitely edges Team USA's lineup. But also Bobby Witt Jr. and Aaron Judge in the same lineup. That's scary. That is scary. But, Juan Soto, got Vladdy. That's also very scary. But the Team USA's pitching is stacked. Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens, Nolan McLean, and Clay Holmes are both pitching in it too. It's going to be fun. All right, but that's all I'm talking about today. I want to get on this football topic so soon because Derek Carr and these rumors with the Jets are heating up, and I want to talk about that soon. So now that I'm more settled in with my new job, I'm going to be back doing a little bit more pods, especially with the baseball season rolling around. You guys know I love baseball. Also want to talk about the Knicks too, especially my guy Jose Alvarado, who finally is in a Knicks uniform. Finally in a Knicks uniform. Since he was with the Pelicans a few years ago, man, I've been waiting. Just waiting for him to hit free agency because I knew he was born. No, maybe not born. But he eats, sleeps, and breathes what all us Knicks fans want out of a basketball player. Hard-nosed guy. Hard-nosed guy. Look, that's it, though, for me. That's it, though. Thank you guys for watching. PD, Heck, Eddie, thank you for commenting, adding a little bit to the show. I really appreciate you guys. I'm out of here. James Nolan Podcast, deuces.